The Scorpio, people go, oh. Here now to talk about Scorpio. I mean, Scorpio is a water sign. Water is feelings. It's associated with the eighth house, so it's often said that the eighth house is the house of deep sharing. Traditionally, it's the house of sex, death, and taxes. Well, each of these things, sex, death, and taxes, are all pieces of our lives that traditionally have been shunted away. They're not talked about. But the thing about Scorpio, it's the only sign in the zodiac that has not one zodiac animal associated with it, the scorpion. It has three. The scorpion transforms into the eagle. And so the eagle is about that higher level of awareness that the scorpion or Scorpio gains when it learns to hold its feelings in. And in the third incarnation, we have the dove. And this is the scorpion that's been transformed and enlightened, and it has no need to go to that poisonous place of anger or revenge, because in Scorpio, negativity is transformed. Scorpio is associated with the passion and the fire and the direction of Mars. But in modern times, we've taken the planet Pluto, which is the lord of the underworld. Pluto is the shadows. It's where these transformations happen. And again, this magic of transformation or metamorphosis for Scorpio is the juice of Scorpio. And as such, Pluto, the lord of the underworld, is your associated planet. The deal is that the hardest part about being a Scorpio is the reputation you have that precedes you. Everyone thinks that you're the astrological, zodiacal badass. Scorpions are poisonous. They have a stinger. No question about it. So the strength of being a Scorpio is your ability to go there. You know what I mean by there? You know, go there. That place where magic happens, where the mild-mannered walk around. They don't go into the shadows. They don't go into the dark. They won't go into the center of the volcano. But you Scorpios know that in that intensity, in that heat, in that passion, that's where creation occurs. That's where the magic happens. The struggle is that that place is not an easy place. And so you Scorpios often struggle with your own feelings or with the intensity of how you react to situations. You look at other people and you wonder, how do they just go through life not feeling that way? If I had one piece of advice for Scorpio, it would be all those people who tell you to lighten up, all those people who tell you to don't feel so much, don't feel so strong, let them find a place where they're more comfortable. Scorpio is a water sign, which astrologically is emotional, and it's a fixed sign, which is immovable, and there's a sense of that intensity of feelings that is expressed by the sign of Scorpio.
So Scorpio is an emotional sign, but because it occupies one of the middles of the four seasons of the year, its fixed nature makes it either resistant to change or uncomfortable revealing that intensity. But it is the very holding on to emotions that makes them so intense and powerful and complex, which is very much what Scorpio is about. Sometimes we can see Scorpio expressing its passion by looking you in the eye, looking into the depths of your soul, and touching you metaphorically and sometimes physically in a very deep and powerful way. But the other side of Scorpio is the exact opposite. Instead of engaging at this deep level, Scorpio can have the sort of the crossed arms and the passive look that reveals nothing, yet is equally intense.
With Scorpio, the magic is the intensity and that ability to hold and fix energy. And yet the paradox is that of all the signs, Scorpio is the one that really represents transformation. And here's the crazy paradox of Scorpio, because on one hand, it is the emotional rigidity, fixity, that holding of the energy that becomes like the water that is in a waterfall that is so intense, it's always moving, but the edge of the water moving is always in the same place. And yet on the other hand,
Scorpio is the only sign in the zodiac that actually has 3 different glyphs representing it. We think of Scorpio as the scorpion, where the poison is in the tail, and the scorpion is ruled by the tail. It's so fearful that it'll end up stinging itself. It'll sting when it doesn't know what to do. But once the scorpion metaphorically learns to hold its poison and transform it, it rises into how we see the scorpion represented in a lot of medieval literature and ancient Greek literature, and that's as the eagle, which is the higher manifestation. The eagle actually can gain altitude and consciousness, which Scorpio does well. It has that total consciousness, and it only swoops down for the food rather than out of fear. It swoops down and kills in order to eat. The third transformation, and sometimes it brings in the idea of the phoenix, which is the bird that has arisen out of the ashes of the runes of destruction and become something magical. And here we have the third incarnation, which is the dove, which is pacifist. The transformation is complete. And this then is the magic of Scorpio. It doesn't move, and yet there's magic in the transformation.
Well, and I think another way to look at Scorpio and to understand it is where it's coming from. It follows Libra, the sign of relationship where we meet others. Scorpio is the point at which we decide how much we're going to engage and what we're going to exchange. If Libra is the date or the meeting or the wedding, Scorpio is the consummation, and therein lies some of its complexity. It's not the bride and groom holding hands on top of the wedding cake. It is the committed couple sharing body, sharing money, and sharing soul. Another way to look at it is that Scorpio is the opposite of Taurus. The mid-spring sign in the Northern Hemisphere, Taurus, is very much about contentment based upon the coming rest of the spring and summer. Scorpio is about mid-fall preparation for winter. It's about hunger. It's about being aware of what things cost, because we're not going to have a new growth season until next year. So Scorpio is very much about measuring what goes on in relationships as well as measuring what goes on in material exchange.
Yeah, the thing about Scorpio following Libra, in Libra, you're right, there's this sense of balance, that's that perfect Indian summer day where it's not winter yet, but it's no longer summer, but the leaves are beautiful and everything's in balance. It feels nice. It's pretty. And yet when the sun moves into Scorpio and we get closer to Halloween, which is one of Scorpio's key holidays, so to speak, where the veil between life and death is very thin, but now the leaves are not on the trees as pretty. They're dried up and the energy has been sucked in. It's been pulled back for that transformation to occur that then creates spring the following year. I'm a Scorpio. People go, oh.
Well, because Scorpio is deeply emotional and aware of that process of transformation that you talked about. It's very hard to find a naive Scorpio. There is something that operates at a greater depth in the psyche, and although it's not inherently dangerous, I think it is discomforting for people who want to keep things on a nice, safe, superficial level.
You think it scares people? Because I think
I do too.
Yeah, I think that often, when you get that sense of that conversation with people who know something about astrology and Scorpio comes up, there's often like this hush or this ooh or this like, now what do we say? Where do we go?
Well, you also talked about Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day. These are all Scorpio holidays that represent the thinness of the veils between the worlds of the living and the dead. So that's part of the scary side, the Halloween side of Scorpio, is that it reminds us that no matter how pretty things are or are not here, that there are other dimensions from which we came and from where to where we will go.
Yeah, so there we have a look at Scorpio, which is one of the more complicated, arguably the most complicated signs of the zodiac. It's not all fun and games, but there is a magic that occurs in the shadows and the darkness of that time of year where that veil gets thinner, that we all can learn something very magical by going to that place and exploring there.